Hello. I think my last video got killed, or my last attempt at this got killed, so we'll restart part 2 again. Okay, so oops. I don't know why this is. Okay. So the female reproductive system, okay? The female reproductive system is a lot more complicated than the males. Simply put, the males are simpler. Males, all we have to do is produce sperm, deposit inside female. The female has to take care of the developing embryo and fetus and child, and even after birth, they have to feed it and nourish it. And so the female has a very different reproductive strategy than males. And therefore, the female one is much more complicated. Okay, so we'll skip this first part about the female reproductive system. That's all anatomy. Okay. The fibroids are relatively common, benign tumors, etc., etc. Okay. Okay. So ovulation cycle. So now we're looking. When we look at, usually we look at the ovulation cycle and we look at the uterine cycle, and these two are correlated with each other. Okay, but we try to look at them from different perspectives. So we're looking at the ovaries. Okay. So at the end of gestation, when you're ready to be born, a female oogonia gives meiosis. Okay, so all the eggs are here at this point by now. So they're beginning meiosis, which is actually kind of cool because males don't produce sperm. Okay, sorry. Males don't produce sperm until puberty. Females produce their eggs before birth. Okay, so the ovaries have a newborn girl have about 2 million primary oocytes. Okay, by puberty, this number is cut to 400,000. Out of those, only 400 will actually make it all the way to ovulation. Okay, so she'll have 400 periods throughout her lifetime. Okay. Okay, so the primary oocytes are contained within primary follicles. Okay, so oops. Primary follicles is here, sorry. Primary follicles, so that thing right there is the egg, and what's around it is a single layer of cuboidal cells, so primary follicle. Okay, in other textbooks, there's a stage before that called primordial follicles, where they're single layer of squamous cells, but I don't see very many in this picture, if at all. Okay. Okay. What happens, okay, is these primary follicles start to grow, but they also compete against one another. And what happens is most of them die, except one of them continues on, and they turn into a fluid-filled vesicle called a secondary follicle. And here you see it there. That's a secondary follicle. Okay. And now you have more growth. Okay. The vesicles fuse together to form a single antrum, and that is a graphene follicle. Okay, graphene follicles look like this. Okay, so all those chambers have fused into one big antrum, and now, okay, I'm gonna draw. Okay, this outside layer of cells is called the corona radiata, radiating sun. And usually when they exit, when the thing bursts open, the shell doesn't look quite as smooth as this, which is why it looks like a radiating sun. Okay, So sperm has to get through that layer, and then it has to go through the next layer, which is this clear layer called the zona pellucida. Literally clear, like pellucida is clear, zona is zone, obviously, and then you can enter the oocyte. Okay. Okay. There. Okay. As the graphene follicle grows, the primary oocyte finishes meiosis 1 to become a secondary oocyte, okay, which contains a polar body. So the divisions of the egg are not equal, okay? The whole purpose of the polar body is to get rid of the half of the DNA that you don't need, okay? The secondary oocyte begins meiosis 2, and then but it stops in the middle of prophase 2, which means, or not prophase, metaphase, which means all the chromosomes are lined up in a row. Okay, it stops right there. It stops right in the middle of meiosis 2. Okay, so you can see the secondary oocyte here. Okay, you can see the useless little polar body there. Okay. Okay, so there. Okay, this stays in meiosis 2 until, okay, fertilization. Okay, if there is one. Okay, ovulation is by the 10th to 14th day after the first day of maturation. Okay, so this part of the ovarian cycle, okay, is called the follicular phase of the ovarian cycle. Okay, so we're looking at the follicles develop, so follicular phase. This varies from person to person, and even depending on, some people have regular periods and some people have irregular periods. This is the variance. Okay, so ovulation occurs anywhere from 10th to 14th day. So this is where things can vary. You'll see the next phase doesn't actually vary. Okay, so the other follicles regress and die. Okay, okay. A single mature follicle is protected by atresis and forms the bulge on the surface of the ovary. Okay, and then what happens is it bursts out of the ovary. Okay, if not fertilized, the oocyte will degenerate after a few days. Literally, it's about 24 hours. I think that's the difference in different textbooks, but really it's about 24 hours to get fertilized. Okay. Okay. So follicle, this is a follicle coming apart. This is a mature graphene follicle. That is ovulation. Okay, after ovulation, okay, the remaining part of the follicle becomes corpus luteum, yellow body, corpus luteum. This yellow body secretes both estrogen, estradiol, and progesterone. Okay, these hormones play a major role in the menstrual cycle, in particular progesterone. Okay, progestation, so progesterone. Okay, this is the corpus luteum. Okay, the corpus luteum will produce progesterone. Progesterone will work on the uterus and keep the uterus from contracting. So there is the uterus doesn't move, so if there is fertilization, the embryo can implant successfully, okay, and stuff. If there is no successful implantation, the corpus luteum dies. The corpus luteum turns into a corpus albicans. The corpus albicans, okay, is just a little white scar, okay? Okay. Okay, so the pituitary secretes FSH and LH, controlled by G and RH, okay? And negative feedback from the ovarian hormones, okay? Okay, aside from stimulating the development of follicles, FSH stimulates estradiol production in the follicles, okay? So the menstrual cycle. Okay, the menstrual cycle, now we're following the uterus. Okay, the other term for the menstrual cycle is the uterine cycle. Okay, so the three phases: the menstrual phase, the proliferative phase, and the circulatory phase. Okay. So I'll go back 1 second because I forgot to talk about one thing. This part, the corpus luteum, when we look at the corpus luteum, we're talking about the luteal phase of the ovarian cycle. Okay, after the corpus luteum. The luteal phase of the ovarian cycle is always 14 days. Okay, you'll see why that's important because, okay. The menstrual cycle, first phase, menstrual phase, second phase, proliferative phase, third phase, secondary phase. Okay. Okay, so they're talking about this there. Okay, I already mentioned this. Well, I don't know why they move this around to talk about it here. Okay, relation. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this. This should have been way in front. Ovulation, FSH causes the graphene follicle to bulge out of the wall. Okay, you have a surge. Okay, the LH surge begins 24 hours before ovulation. This stimulates the follicle to rupture, which releases the secondary oocyte. When you take one of those ovulation kits, this is what they're measuring, okay? The LH surge, okay? Okay. Blah, blah, the corpus luteum surge increase. So progesterone levels peak about 1 week after ovulation. About 1 week after ovulation is when implantation occurs, okay? Okay, so corpus luteum. Okay, blah. If there is no ovulation, the thing degenerates about day 28. Okay. Okay. If there is no corpus luteum, there's no estradiol and estrogen or progesterone. Sorry, and the loss of progesterone causes this sloughing of causes the contraction of the uterus, which causes a sloughing off of the endometrium in menstruation. Okay. Okay. So let your phase. Okay. We'll cover these two phases per phase. Okay. So the peripheral phase. Okay. So the first day is menstruation. Okay. So the first day of the uterine cycle is menstruation, and lasts about 3 to 5 days, and then you go into the proliferative phase where you proliferate, and then you have ovulation. Okay, ovulation is here, and then you go into the secondary phase. Okay, the secondary phase matches the luteal phase perfectly. Okay, so you can play around with the follicular phase and the secretory phase, but the secretory phase and the luteal phase match. Okay. Okay. PCOS, Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome, is a common uterine disorder. Okay. The ovaries contain follicles that become fully filled cysts and start secreting excessive amounts of androgens. Okay. All right. Okay. Pheromones, blah, blah, blah. This is not true. Okay, I don't know why they put it in this next book, but this is not true. They actually published a paper a couple of years ago that says this is not true, so ignore that. The Normatory Effect, I'll explain what it is. So you just, okay. They used to go in colleges and think that most women who lived in dorms all together, all of a sudden their ovarian cycle synced up and they had periods all at the same time. So Dormitory Effect. And they realized the only way that could possibly happen if this was true was that there must be some pheromone that causes everyone to sync up. But they realized that wasn't true. So yeah, don't worry about that. Okay. Okay. So neurons from the limbic system feedback. Stress can actually cause amenorrhea, which is a lack of menstruation. So again, your body needs to be ready for pregnancy. So if you're stressed out, if you're starving, etc., you won't ovulate because you won't, like, if your body feels like there's no way to have a pregnancy and carry it to term, then it won't ovulate because there's no point. That only increase higher risk for your health. Okay, so okay. Same thing, low body fat, lack of preparation for pregnancy, no ovulation. Okay. Contraceptive pills. Okay. Okay. Includes the synthetic estradiol and progesterone, acts like a prolonged luteal phase, so produces negative feedback of GnRH, so ovulation never occurs. Okay, so the endometrium so proliferates. Okay, and then what you have are fake pills. The placebo pills are taken for 1 week to allow for menstruation, and then you do it again. Okay, because it causes you to menstruate on cycle, and you never ovulate. So there's gonna be problems with this later on, and yes. Okay. Other contraceptive methods. So the contraceptive pill. What happens is you end up having a lot of you have a lot of oocytes later, and they come out more often. So you're more likely to super fertile, and you have like more likely chances of having twins. Okay. 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 Pregnancy is the rhythm method of contraception. Pregnancy is unlikely as long as the couple has sex 6 or more days before ovulation and more than 1 day after. So the egg can come out okay, and survive for 1 day. So the sperm has 1 day to meet it, okay? The sperm can stay in the fallopian tubes for a while before the egg comes out. That's why there's a longer period before ovulation. The other textbooks say 2 to 3 days, and I think that's more accurate. 2 to 3 days before ovulation and 1 day after. Okay. A woman can time her ovulation by taking her temperature. There's a temperature spike that's correlated with ovulation. Okay. Okay. So the temperature spike with ovulation. Again, this is a very small spike. Okay. This is 0.04 degrees difference. So if you ever have those thermometers, they are super sensitive, which is pretty cool. I still remember the one we had. So, all right. Menopause. Okay. You have 400 ovulations. After that, there is no more eggs. So usually occurs after age 50. Okay. Okay, the symptoms of menopause are due to loss of estradiol. Okay. Okay, and because of the loss of estradiol, there's a increased risk for arteriosclerosis and osteoporosis. Okay. Okay. Estradiol is needed for bone reabsorption. Okay. Okay. So pregnancy and partition. So over 3 million sperm enter the female at ovulation. Okay. Okay. So over 300 million sperm enter the female at ejaculation. Only about 100 of those live to enter the fallopian tube. I think the numbers are actually higher than that, but not much higher. Okay, so the number we used to cite was somewhere around 1,000. So, but in order to fertilize the ovum, the sperm must become capacitated. It takes about at least 7 hours after ejaculation. This happens in the semen, etc., etc. Okay. 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 The capacitated sperm are guided to oocyte through. Okay. Fertilization occurs in the fallopian tubes or uterine tubes. Okay. Okay. These guys. So basically what happens is they have to chew through the corona radiata, okay, and through the zona pellucida before hitting the sperm, hitting through into the ovum, okay. And once inside the ovum, the only thing that actually gets in is the sperm head, okay, not the sperm midpiece or not the sperm tail, the sperm head, okay. That's why your mitochondrial DNA is only from your mother, because the head, the body stays inside the female or outside the female. Okay. Okay. So there you go. Activation allows these things to leak, and that way they can start chewing through. Okay. Okay. After the sperm enters the oocyte, you have a massive calcium release from the endoplasmic reticulum. That calcium wave travels through the oocyte. Okay, and pops all the other sperm off. Okay, and that is called the fast block to polyspermy. Okay. that signal also allows the female to complete meiosis, and now you have two, okay, nucleuses. Okay. Okay. So what happens is that two nucleuses fuse, okay, and the moment of fusion of nucleuses is technically when fertilization occurs, okay? So monozygotic twins, when a single ovum splits, okay, dizygotic twins or fraternal twins are two eggs that are fertilized by two sperm, okay? They're more commonly called fraternal twins. It's, two eggs, two sperm, okay? Usually one from each ovum, actually, okay? Or not ovum, ovary. Okay. Okay, so you actually have a second polar body here, which is cool. So this is kind of important if you're trying to look for genetic defects, because you can look at the second polar body and determine if that egg is actually what you want. Okay. 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 IVF. Okay. In virtual fertilization. Okay. IVF starts by the female undergoing hormone injections to hyperstimulate the ovarian follicles. You don't want to take out one egg, you want to take out lots of eggs. Okay, the oocytes are harvested and they're fertilized through intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Okay, that causes fertilization, and then they'll develop a lot for 3 to 5 days, then implant it into the uterus. Most of the time, this doesn't work. Okay, but sometimes it takes, and sometimes you have multiple embryos, wishing that take and that are increased to numbers of multiple births. Okay, twins happen, triplets happen, quadruplets, quintuplets, and octuplets. That crap is all in vitro. Okay, like those things will never happen, and honestly, usually there's not enough room in the uterus, and some of the fetuses die, unfortunately, or get absorbed and stuff. Okay. So in vitro fertilization, this pipette is holding the egg. If you suction an egg and hold it there, that pipette is injecting the sperm. Okay, so cleavage begins to 30 to 36 hours after ovulation. This is characterized by a rapid mitosis. Okay, the cells. This is called cleavage because the cells aren't growing; they're just dividing. The egg is just dividing into smaller cells. Okay. 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 So here, okay, you have to implant at this stage right here. Okay, so it has to go through all of this dividing. There's some nutrients in the fluid, but there's not that much, so you're not growing very much. What you are is you're dividing. Okay. Okay, so you can see all the pictures here. Okay, implantation. Okay, occurs day 6 after fertilization. Okay, so you puncture into the endometrium. Okay, You completely bury yourself in. Okay. So right here, bury yourself in. Okay. See these two lines right here, this yellow line and the blue line? That is you. The rest of that is either going to get destroyed or turn into the placenta and other embryonic structures like the yolk sac, etc., etc. But the only thing that's actually you is these two lines. Okay. Okay. Embryonic stem cells and cloning. Okay. Early embryonic stem cells are totally potent. So not only can they turn into any cell in your body, they can turn into any cell in the placenta and stuff. Okay. Okay. This stuff is successful in sheep, blah, blah, blah. I mean, if it's successful in horses and stuff, it's going to be successful in humans. The only reason it hasn't been successful in humans is because we can't do it. Okay? Morally and ethically and stuff like that. Okay? Okay. Inner cell mass cells, cultured in vitro, called embryonic stem cells, are pluripotent. Pluripotent can become any single cell in the body. It cannot become like a placenta cell and stuff. Okay? These cells might be used therapeutically to treat type 1 diabetes, Parkinson's disease, spinal cord injury. Because again, these things can turn into beta cells, okay, neurons and stuff. Okay. Adult stem cells are found in these places. These are some of them are multipotent, but they can't jump across embryonic germ layers. Okay, so we can do, and they can't really go too far away from what they are. It's really hard to get them to rise to different types of cells, okay? And there are 3 germ layers. So at this stage, you only have 2. You have this yellow layer and a blue layer. The yellow layer will turn to neural tissue. The blue layer will turn into your digestive tract. And then you have a 3rd layer grow in the middle called a mesoderm. So, yeah. Okay. Chorionic gonadotropin. Okay, so there has to be a way for. Remember, I told you if there's no pregnancy, the uterus contracts and causes menstruation, and that's done because the corpus luteum dies. So there has to be a signal to the body to keep the corpus luteum alive. Okay, that signal is chorionic gonadotropin, otherwise known as HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. Okay, that's the hormone that you measure when you pee on a stick for pregnancy. Okay, the blastocyst releases chorionic gonadotropin. It goes to the corpus luteum and keeps the corpus luteum alive. Keeping the corpus luteum alive forces the corpus luteum to produce progesterone. Progesterone keeps the endometrium thick and prevents the uterus from contracting. Okay, the secretion of HCG declines by the 10th week because the placenta takes over to help maintain the pregnancy. Okay. Okay. So HCG first couple of months. Okay. Okay. So like I said, here is a 3-layer version of the 2 layers thing you were looking at: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. Okay. 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 So here you have the external membranes. Okay. Here you have the little fetus growing. So by definition, we have a tail, we have gill slits. Okay. We have a nodal cord, and we have a nerve cord, a dorsal nerve cord. Okay. Okay. We also have a primitive yolk sac. Okay, there's no yolk in the yolk sac, just to let you know. Okay. We grow up in an amniotic sac. So amniotic sac is something that all mammals and reptiles grow up in. That sac contains amniotic fluid. It has initially comes from fluid from the mother, but eventually it comes with fluid from the urine from the fetus, slough cells, and therefore you can check the amniotic fluid for, amniocentesis. Okay. 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 So things you can do, amniocentesis. Okay. Can diagnose genetic abnormalities such as Down syndrome. Samples are taken between weeks 14 to 20. You can do something earlier than that, and that's called chorionic villus sampling, or CVS. Okay, CVS, they take a sample of these villi. So this is the chorionic villi, and so they can take a little sample of that, and that is again fetal DNA. Okay. Blood samples from the mother can also seem to have a little bit of fetal DNA. Fetal cells, you can spin out those fetal cells, so they're different than maternal cells, and they can isolate the DNA from the fetal cells. Okay. Okay. So this is the maternal artery and maternal vein. So the maternal artery actually leaks fluid around the capillaries. Okay, and the capillaries basically the chorionic villi. Remember, they have a different form of hemoglobin. This form of hemoglobin is stronger than the maternal hemoglobin, so it will pump the maternal hemoglobin for the oxygen, which goes then to the fetus. Okay. 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 So like I said, this is for growth. The progesterone inhibits the labor promoting uterine proteins. Okay. Okay. All right. So powerful contractions are needed to expel the fetus occur in response to oxytocin. Okay. So what happens? Okay, labor is initiated by increasing levels of chronotropic releasing hormone from the placenta. Okay. So stimulates for production of surfactant, again, get the baby getting ready to come out. So it needs to breathe air. So it starts secreting surfactant. Okay. Okay. The HEAS is converted to estradiol on the placenta that makes the myometrium more sensitive to oxytocin and other prostaglandins. Okay. So what happens? Okay, oxytocin release causes the baby's head to push. Okay, push against the cervix. Okay, so here's the fetus. So the fetus actually controls its own time coming out. Okay, so this cortisol level produces placental CRH and stuff like that. So, okay. Okay, so the baby's head pushes against the cervix, which causes more oxytocin release, okay, which causes more pushing until the baby is expelled, okay? So, okay, mammillary glands, okay? So, progesterone stimulates alveoli growth, estradiol promotes ductile and tube growth, okay? Prolactin causes production of milk, okay? Okay, so nursing maintains high levels of prolactin secretion. Okay, so lactation, so prolactin produces milk, okay, but what ultimately releases milk is actually oxytocin, okay? So oxytocin is responsible for two things. One is responsible for contraction of the uterus, okay, and two, like contraction of the milk ducts to produce milk, okay? These two also allows oxytocin to do the important thing, which is create bonding between mother and child. Okay, also the effects of oxytocin. Okay. Okay, so sensory input, sucking. Sucking causes oxytocin release, which causes milk ejaculation. Okay. Okay. Breastfeeding immunities. So we went over this in micro. IgG is protects the mother, the child in utero because it passes through the bloodstream. IgA, okay, so after the birth, the mother produces IgA. IgA antibodies are passed through in the breast milk. Okay. So here you can see that here. Okay. Okay. All right. Breastfeeding inhibits GnRH, which inhibits gonadotropins and ovulation. So, from the point of view of the mother, if it's already feeding one baby, it doesn't really have the energy and resources to get pregnant and take care of another baby in utero. Okay, so breastfeeding tells the mother's body they're feeding someone, so they can't get pregnant, so it acts as a natural natural contraception. Okay. Okay. So again, this is not a guarantee, obviously, but it is a normal response that you don't ovulate when you're conceiving, or when you're breastfeeding. If the baby weans itself, and then that's one way of thinking about it. The other more horrible way, if the baby dies, then you have room and resources to take on another child, so you can ovulate again. Okay. Okay. So that is all physiology. All right. See you guys in class.